Your domain name is not going to sell unless this one thing happens. Hey, Chris Zuiker with Media Options, help companies to acquire the raw, unfiltered version of their brand. That's the exact match domain name in most cases. Also broken some of the best domain names on the planet, so check it out at MediaOptions.com. Also check out ChrisZuiker.com. I do a daily podcast over there, and just stores into domaining as well as YouTube and blog posts. Lots of information on domain names. Check it all out if you're curious into the world of domain names. But this is going to be a quick video. And what I want to talk about is why some domain names don't sell and why some domain names take years to sell. And typically the companies that have engaged the domain, maybe engaged the owner, engaged the broker, engaged the company. For instance, we have some domain names, not at liberty to say which ones, but there's some domain names that have taken. One was over a year. One was maybe a couple of years, but some of them just take time, and it's because of this one thing. Okay, so if you think about the sales cycle, there is a logical case to buy a domain name. I talk about this as the 7 dimensions to a domain name. It's global positioning, leadership positioning, branding, marketing, SEO, email security, and the ability to pivot. Okay, I think that's 7. If that's not 7, I'll go back and look. But those are the dimensions to a domain name, okay, and how a domain profoundly impacts a brand. Now, global positioning is this ability to own your positioning globally. I talk the story about, one of the stories I like to say is a story about Kraken. There's Kraken Rum and there's Kraken Crypto Exchange. Kraken Rum came out first. They launched with $13 million in advertising and put a lot of money into advertising, but they went out with Kraken Rum. This little company at the time, I say it's little, don't know the full story, but it was Kraken Crypto Exchange. They acquired and they own Kraken.com. Now what happened is that you had these two companies vying for this keyword Kraken, okay? I'm Kraken. No, I'm Kraken. Well, guess what? The one that is able to provide the simplest and most effortless path went out because customers and clients and just human psychology of how we interact, we crave simplicity and we reward simplicity. So in this case, what happens if you go to and you look up Kraken Crypto Exchange dominates search. Now, I'm sure back in the day, they're like, Kraken Rum, we're cool, domain name, they'll find us, it doesn't matter. And they put in millions and millions of dollars into Kraken Rum. But they allowed another brand to come in. They allowed another brand to this window of opportunity into Kraken. Now, it's interesting because a lot of the brands that we're brokering, there's other brands that are out there. And as startups are looking for their, who they're going to call themselves, they take inspiration from these other brands. Oh, that's really cool. That could make a cool brand for us. Oh, is the .com taken? No, it's not. Are you kidding me? Boom. And they buy it. And now they own the global positioning. And so anyways, so Kraken Rum put all these millions of dollars into advertising, but Kraken Crypto Exchange now dominates the mind share for everything Kraken. If you look at it, they have the first couple pages of search are, dominated by Kraken Crypto Exchange. I think Kraken Rum was on the second page at one point. They may have been back to the first page, but it's like one entry. It's one entry. And they put millions and millions of dollars into it, but they could have owned the global positioning and they didn't. So this thought that if you don't own the global positioning, that you could, that's the biggest risk to your brand, ability to scale and really maximize the compound impact from your marketing budget. Okay, that's what we call the logical reasons to buy a domain name, right? Logical reasons. We talk about traffic, email security, how we've had some brands that, literally they run on a .co, the founders, the CEOs, the venture capitalists. Listen, they're sending emails to this other company because they don't own their .com for their name. Okay, email security. They chose the wrong domain name. And so what happens is that they don't own it, right? They lose a lot of traffic and sensitive emails to their company. That, once again, is the logical reason, but that's not what is going to get it across the finish line. What's going to get it across the finish line is this thought of the self-view of the people that are buying it, that they come to the realization that I can leverage that asset. You see, you could have a founder, you could have a marketing executive that gets it. They said, yeah, listen, I get it. That's great for my brand, but I interiorly, I don't know if I can leverage that. I don't know if I spend $300,000, $500,000, $1 million, $20,000, $5,000. It really doesn't matter the price tag. But it's this self-view that says that I have the skills, I have the abilities, and that if I buy that, I will leverage that, I will make that work in my business, and I will increase the brand equity to the point where the founder of Ring.com, he bought Ring.com for $1 million. And when he sold it, he said, hey, listen, this is worth probably at least $40 to $45 million, the domain name alone, to the brand equity. And he sold his company to $1 billion to Amazon. But what happens is that it's the one thing that people don't see. It's the one thing that you just can't, in a sense, you can't force this. You can't force the ability of a founder, of a CEO, to have this self-view that says that, okay, I'm worthy of this domain name. I'm worthy of owning my brand. Now, typically what happens is they go into a conversation with their board of directors. They go into a conversation with their investors. And their investors put an immense amount of pressure. Okay, those are people that can put pressure on them to say, hey, you better do it. Are you crazy? I'm also the board member of these other companies. Let me tell you these stories of how the domain name impacted their brand. You have to go out, you have to acquire, you have to buy it. And so that typically is what does move them across that line, and that self-view across that line to say, okay, that's great. We have to have it. We have to have it. Right? We're not okay with other brands being out there calling themselves the same keyword that we're calling ourselves. And so that's the one thing, okay? The one thing, you have to present the logical case to owning your brand. Listen, if you're a marketer, if you're a founder, you're saying, and you're watching this video and you're trying to figure out, hey, what's the one thing that I need? Well, that's it, okay? I mean, there's many logical reasons. Go back, watch my videos, all the logical reasons, all the stories of founders, all the stories of brands that acquire the domain, and they say, you know what, do it, go out, buy it, get it in early, lock it in early before another brand gets it, because this has been a foundational asset to our brand. Go back and look at those. But also understand that it's the self-view, and also look at the journey of these founders, these startups, where they cross that threshold, and the immense amount of clarity, the immense amount of commitment, the immense amount of passion that it brought to their brand, to their messaging, to their employees, to their clients, to their customers, to their marketing, their branding, to their positioning. Okay, back to the 7 dimensions of how a domain name impacts a brand. Self-view is extremely important when going out. Now, I'm going to make one caveat here, okay, and that's action threshold. So I did a video a week ago, and I said, what's the sweet spot for domain name? Well, the sweet spot for most domain names, because I go into the value. Okay, how do you value domain name? Because 3 functions to value domain name. 1 is what's the raw equity. Number 2 is what's the brand equity that's out there. Number 3, what's the perceived equity, the market equity. Most of the domain names, okay, most domain names that are out there, most of these platforms, listen, they don't really have much raw equity. Maybe it's 2, 3 words. They don't really have much brand equity, but they have perceived equity. And so that action threshold is what gets most brands across the finish line. So, for instance, if it's $3,000, well, most people, they just don't bat an eye at $3,000, especially if it's a business that they think they're going to make money. And so by default, the action threshold is very low, and so they get that across the finish line. But when you're talking about high-ticket domain names, there has to be belief, there has to be commitment, there has to be passion behind what you're building. And until you have that, until an owner has that, they're not going to take it across the finish line to acquiring the raw, unfiltered version of their brand. Okay. That's it for this video. Make sure you go and check out chriszuiker.com. Check out my daily podcast. I have lots of stories into domain names, into stories, into my conversations with owners and negotiations. So check it out. I think you'll get some value over there. Also, check out my other videos on YouTube. Check out MediaOptions.com. Check our blog out. I've done a lot of blogs, in-depth blogs, like 3,000, 5,000 words, talking about values, talking about how brands utilize multiple domain names, domain name strategies. So a lot of information over there on the logical case to acquiring your domain name. And hey, lastly, if you found any value in this, share this video up. You just got done listening to another episode of .com Strategies. Check us out online at chriszuiker.com and at mediaoptions.com.